everyone, and thank you all so much for coming out for November's GulfChat. For those who are joining us for the first time or either virtually, this series takes place every month on the second Thursday at 6 p.m. Now, we've got a very exciting topic today, invasive species. And we're taking an interesting angle because we normally think about the animals that are coming in. Today we're looking at plant species. Now, we've got two wonderful organizations who do amazing outreach, education, and preservation. Mobile County Master Gardeners and Friends of Mobile Trees. And without further ado,
My name is Jo Broussard, and I am a Master Gardener. I have been a Master Gardener since 1994, a long time. It is an absolutely wonderful organization. You learn all sorts of stuff. It's the stepping stone so that you can take it to other areas. I am also a teacher. I teach 4-H natural resources to local elementary schools, normally 4th and 5th graders, but I will teach anybody that they will put in front of me. And I teach natural resources. So I've taken my love of nature one step further to bring it into our local school system so that these children have an opportunity. Because in this day and age, they do this. They don't go outside and do much out there. And a lot of them have not only no knowledge of what's out there, but no understanding that that is where we came from and that they need to know about those things, because there may become a time in life that they're going to have to grow their own food or at least know where their food comes from, and they have no idea. So being a Master Gardener has helped me in that endeavor, most definitely. I'm originally from South Louisiana, so not too far from here. And I have previously been the grounds director at Mobile Botanical Gardens for 12 years. So my blood runs pretty green. I love plants, and that's my love of life. Tonight we're going to be talking about invasive species, and unfortunately Mobile, Alabama, and all of Alabama has quite a few. We have the kind of climate that is found all over the world in certain parts, and because of that, invasive species have found a home here. And it's very sad, very true. They come in a lot of different ways. They outcompete our native species. And for the record, Mobile it's called the Amazon of the South, because we have so much diversity here. We have fish that don't live anywhere else. We have a plethora of all sorts of animals. The black bear is found more in Saraland, Alabama than any other place in Alabama. So locally we have all sorts of stuff. But getting back to the native plants, they are the plants that were here long before we came here, and they've been here for millions of years. They have developed the resistance to diseases, to insects. They have developed all of our plant-eating mammals and animals eat those things. When you bring a native into your garden, you are bringing in something that belongs there, and it will bring all the creatures in nature that want to be around that. When you bring in invasives, and we have a lot of those, and they can come in all sorts of forms, from plants, shrubs, trees, vines, even water plants. That creates a huge problem, because they don't have the predators. They don't have things that eat them. Our mammals don't eat them. Kogon grass is a perfect example. You can't feed it to hardly anything but a goat, and it doesn't like it much. So what happens is they take over, because they don't have anything to control it. They are not from here. So they're difficult to control. Kogon grass in particular, there's nothing you can put on it that's going to kill it right away. It will take years and years to get it out of our life. Kudzu is easier to get rid of than Kogon grass, sorry to say. They affect our recreational outdoor activities. They're bullies. They take over. The species can become invasive when it outgrows the area that it is in, and it does that quite easily. It will lower our area's biodiversity. It alters our soil nutrients because they're not native to here, so they don't necessarily add back what we need to have in our nutrients. Fire sometimes helps, sometimes it doesn't. In the case of Kogon grass, it burns so hot that if it's invaded into a forest that we would normally burn on a controlled burn or just in nature, fires happen all the time. It will burn so intensely that it will actually kill the pine trees. About the only tree that we don't find it damaging very much are our longleaf pines. But that's just one of our pines. If you have a mixed forest, it could take out your forest just by having a lightning strike out there. So they're not good in any way, shape, or form. They just don't have anything that wants to eat them and get rid of them. So they're just here forever. They spread by wind, water, they'll go on water. Birds will eat them and drop the seeds somewhere else. Mammals will sometimes eat them, drop those seeds somewhere else. Vehicles, if you have somebody that's driving their four-wheeler through the forest and pick up the seeds from those plants, those invasive plants, and don't wash it off before they bring it back to their property, there you go. You now have it on your property. Animals will pick it up and carry it that are just walking through the woods. You will pine straw. I can't tell you how many times, because I do landscaping too, how many times I open a bale of pine straw and I find those weeds in there. And when you put it in someone else's garden as a bedding, then you are introducing that very invasive species to their home garden. And that's never a good thing. Also, if you want to fill in holes, if you have holes and you use soil that has those seeds, again, you've introduced that. So you have to be very careful with invasive. They're bullies and they're not easy to get rid of. If you have a piece of property and you are clearing it to build a house or put something else on it, that bare virgin soil is now open to all of these things that can come in and invade it. And once they do, you're pretty much out of luck with some of these things. And if you have field dirt brought in for whatever reason, even red clay, Kogon grass will go right through red clay, it doesn't care. So by doing that, you're introducing something else. So you need to be very, very careful where you get. When people say, oh, I'll bring you topsoil, there is no topsoil left to bring you. They're digging something down deeper, and it's not really topsoil. So you want to be very careful with that. Hurricanes are another way that a lot of these things are introduced. They come fierce, ferocious, and they pick up everything from wherever they came from to where they drop it off here. And they drop off a lot of stuff. That's how Mobile got Kogon further north than what it is now. It was originally brought in as dried packing material in some China that was brought over. Didn't come from China, it's crystal and china and dishes. They had it as packing material. Somebody picked it up, threw it out, didn't care, it grows. It can lay dormant for a long time and still grow. So you have to be very careful. When sometimes we are diverting water, making it move to a different direction, we damage the land and it carries all those seeds, and when it falls on fresh ground, it takes root. So it's very, like I said, it's very difficult to get rid of. Shrubs, algae, trees, woody vines, grasses, vinery ferns, as well as subshrubs. Now, some of these invasive plants are things that you wouldn't really think would be invasive. When you think of kudzu or kogon, you're thinking, oh, they're horrible, terrible things. But we plant lots of things that are invasive. I have them in my house that I have planted long before I knew that they were invasive, and they have taken over on my property. Beautiful little things can turn out to be very, very invasive. So you really have to be knowledgeable and know what you're doing when you do this. Most of these are intentionally introduced, like I said, either as packing material or somehow they got on a ship, or sometimes they got in a bale of something, and lo and behold, the next thing you know, it's here. And it's very difficult to get rid of. We don't have sometimes the chemicals that it takes to get rid of something, you don't want to fool with. You really don't want to mess with some of that stuff. It requires, the really tough stuff requires a license, and most of those people will only do it commercially. They will not come out to your home because it's not safe. Y'all have seen the ads about, Roundup. Roundup's good, but you have to be careful with it. And I know people, I hear them saying, well, if I need to add this much, I'm going to add this much and really kill it. It doesn't do that. Once it's killed it, it's like taking an aspirin. Once you've taken an aspirin, taking 40 doesn't make your headache go away. It kills you. So it doesn't do any good to overdo those chemicals. You always need to read that. Some of these plants were brought in as potential food for animals. Some of it was brought in so that it can help erosion. Well, kudzu will help erosion real well. You'll never see it because it will cover it up. It'll cover a 10-story building in no time at all. It can actually grow almost a foot a day. I have sat there and watched it, and you can actually see it growing. That is terrifying to me. So some of the plants that we have planted intentionally. Like I said, I've done it myself in my property for decorations, things that are pretty. There are things that are spread primarily by birds. Birds eat the seeds, they fly away. You know what they do after they eat, what we all do. They'll drop it on somebody else's property, flying over. And it takes roots because these invasives are more easily rooted here than they would be necessarily in their own landscape at home. So very careful when you do this. And I'm going to give you some examples. Bamboo. They say there's a clumping bamboo. Don't believe it. It will clump right over your entire property. So be careful. And the root system on the bamboo is so invasive that you literally have to put about a 2-foot metal ring in the ground to keep it from going through that. So you don't want it. And I have people that say, well, I'll put it in a pot. Well, the roots come out the bottom. Unless you put it in the middle of a parking lot, then make sure it's cement parking, not asphalt, because it will go through the asphalt too. So you have to be very careful. Chinese privet was brought into this country. Birds eat the little tiny seeds. It is now, if you go to any farm, anywhere, if they have a finch row, you will find Chinese privet there. And now they have come out with the little privet that's kind of a chartreusey color that you can plant. And they say that it's sterile, it cannot reproduce, but I have seen it come off with green shoots. It reverts back to the green. That green will have berries, flowers, and berries, and they will reproduce. So even if it's the chartreuse yellow and it's real pretty, very unusual, you got to watch it. It's sneaky. China berry, we know what those are. Chinese tallow trees. Back in the 70s, these were planted a lot by ladies who liked to have the white berries so that at Christmas time they could make all sorts of things with those pretty white berries. They did. They threw them out afterwards, and now we are inundated. I know people that have these trees are this big, and they say, oh, but it makes such pretty berries. Yes, and every bird that flies by grabs one and sends it somewhere else. Kogon grass we talked about. That is the worst thing I have ever come across in my life. Kogon grass it will go down 2 feet. It will spread by rhizomes. It has a sharp point. I wear leather gloves when I garden, and I have had thorns sticking, not thorns, but poke through my thick man-sized leather gloves, and it hurts. It hurts really bad. So it will eat you up if you're not careful. And the sides are sharp too. Invasive roses. We have invasive roses. There's a Cherokee rose that is white, and if you're driving up or down I-65, in the late spring you will see big white flowers all over, and it's climbing in trees. That's very invasive, and it's got more thorns than you ever want to run across. There's a multiflora, which is a small pink or white one, and it can go 30 feet. And again, birds eat the seeds off of it, the rose hips, and the rose hips have lots of seeds in it, and they spread like crazy. Japanese climbing fern. Those were intentionally planted because weddings, people that host weddings, it makes real pretty along the edge of a table. They would throw it out, and it goes everywhere. So that's another big no-no. Kudzu, like I said, kudzu, do you know kudzu makes a wonderful flower? It's purple, and it smells like old-timey grape Kool-Aid. and it makes great jelly. It's not a reason to have it though. You can buy grape jelly anywhere. Don't do kudzu. So, tropical soda apple, which is not something we see very much. It's kind of thorny and it makes a little green apple, and it's not an apple, it just has some stripes. It looks more like, to me, a watermelon than an apple, but that's very invasive. Mimosa trees, they are beautiful, and my mama had a mimosa, so we always say my mama's mimosa, and that's okay. It doesn't do well here. They call it a trash tree because it's not very strong. It does not hold up to hurricanes at all. It's not very long lived. So you want to make sure you don't have those. A princess tree, we don't have those very often. Russian olive, which is Elaeagnus, and most people call it ugly Agnes. In South Louisiana, where I'm from, they literally have it in the middle of the medians because it will stop a semi-truck going at 80 miles an hour. That's how thick it is. They're beautiful. They're kind of a grayish, and it makes a huge, huge bush. And it makes a little fruit on it. They're pretty, but they're very, very invasive, so you don't really want to have those. And they're boogers to get rid of, so you don't want to have those. Ligustrums, in the springtime, they make beautiful white flowers that equal in fragrance to gardenias. If you have any kind of sinuses, you don't want to be around any of those. And they, again, have little berries that all the birds will eat. Ardisia is something that I planted at my house. It can be a tall one about like this or a small ground cover. And it has a waxy coating on it, so you can spray all the Roundup you want on it. It just slides off. So that's and it makes a big fat mat. So it's very difficult to get rid of. Bush honeysuckle, we don't see that here very often. Nandinas are really bad too. I know that some people have the great big nandinas that have the beautiful red flowers, and they're gorgeous. But again, they can be found all over in the woods because they have just spread. So that's not really a good thing. Now, there are some dwarf ones that are sterile. They cannot reproduce. They will not make a berry, they will not make a flower. But they are pretty, and those are okay, but you have to make sure you don't get the great big kind that's going to make the flowers. Climbing or air potatoes. This makes a beautiful heart-shaped leaf, and it makes a ball can be about like this, and they're brown, and I won't even begin to tell you what they remind me of, but they don't appear on females, let's put it that way. And every one of those seed pods will fall and create a new bush, and they can go 30 feet up, and when you try to pick them like honeysuckle, the outside stem will come off, but the inside stem stays, so they're very hard to get rid of. Winter creeper is something you generally don't find here very often. It's a little further north. English ivy can get away, and if you have it on your house, it's got I see head shaking, It has those little feeder feet that go inside the brick and the mortar on your house and can literally tear your house apart. You see it all the time if you watch English movies. Their houses are made of stone, not bricks. So it can stick to stone and it doesn't hurt it, not like it does down here. Japanese honeysuckle, another one, that's the one that will tear apart. Periwinkle, a lot of people, older ladies, I'm not one of them, periwinkle, they love it because it makes that real pretty blue flower, sort of like a hydrangea. It's that color blue that's just so hard to find in nature. Non-native wisteria makes beautiful purple flowers. It should be left to Giverny in France, where it is hanging over the pond and it's gorgeous and you got the bridge. Don't have it here. Again, it is a booger to get rid of, and it will take over if you're not very careful with it. And we have something else that you don't find in people's gardens so much. It's wild. It's called a giant reed, and it will get 8, 10, 12 feet tall. Has a beautiful plume. On the way driving up Citronelle, it's all over. And it's gorgeous. It's a purple plume. But again, it will literally take over. So what can we do? You can not buy things that are invasive. If you have something invasive and you see it, get rid of it as soon as you can. Dig it up if at all possible and put it in a plastic bag. Do not put it in your compost pile because you're just going to replant it again, and even better because it's now in fertilized soil. If you drive four-wheelers or any kind of a vehicle someplace where there are invasive species, when you come back, take it to a car wash. Don't do it in your driveway. Wash that sucker, the undercarriage, everything. Get it all off. If you have brought your pets with you, bathe them, have that water go down the drain. Don't bathe them outside. If you have horses and you ride in the woods, come back and you bathe your horses on cement where it's going to drain off into something, not just drain off. Don't dig up in places where you don't have to. If you can leave something alone, just leave it alone. If there are native species already there, that's what's supposed to be there. So if you can just leave them there, be very careful when you're bringing in pine straw or soil. If you can get good soil, that's great. I've never in 30 years been able to find any good soil, any topsoil. It's just not there. Once they have taken the topsoil off, it's gone. So the next person's not getting topsoil, they're just getting the second topsoil, which is not topsoil. So just be very careful. Anytime you see any of this, get rid of it as soon as you can. Sometimes the best method that I've had, if you have to cut down a tree, if you have a mimosa tree or something, it will continue to root. It will come back up from the stalk. What I have found that works is you have a bottle of Roundup with you, mixed up. You cut that tree. Within 1 minute, paint the top of that tree with that Roundup. When you get a bobo, your body's going and it sucks in. Same thing happens with that tree. The vascular system is sucking in because it's trying to seal it up and protect itself, just like your body does. So if you do that, it will suck it in. Now, if you decide to get some sprouts on it, and you may, depending on the size of the tree and how low you cut it, cut those off and immediately get a paintbrush or something and put some more Roundup on that. If it's a big tree, you might want to try going to Home Depot or Lowe's and getting something called brush killer. It's stronger, it's tougher. You may also want to put a little bit of like soap, like dishwashing soap in there. It acts as a surfactant, which is a sticker. So if you have something that's a shiny leaf and you want to spray something on it, that soap will help it stick to that leaf and not just roll off of it. It will also help seal that Roundup into the stump that you have cut off. And don't leave that stump alone. Watch it. Because again, if you get side shoots coming up, your stump's alive. I have people that say, oh, well, I'll just drill a hole or spread salt around it. You're damaging the soil then. You're killing. Put salt on an earthworm and see what happens. You kill it. You don't want to damage anything. The first 6 inches of your soil is where all the micronutrients are. Everything that you need in that soil is in that 6 inches. So don't do anything to destroy it. Don't use soil on it. Don't use salt on it. Now, using Roundup, it doesn't generally work very well when it gets below 60 degrees. So you're going to have to find something else that will work. If you have weeds and things in your home lawn, again, there are products made for all sorts of southern grasses. If you know what kind of grass you have, then you can go purchase that. The last thing I want to say is I know that coming up, there's going to be, after the first of the year, there's going to be a whole lot of weed and feed. You're throwing your money away. Weed and feed does nothing. When you put it out February, March, April, you're trying to kill the weeds that you see, or winter weeds. They're going to die anyhow when it gets warm. So you're not killing them, they're dying anyhow. But they're leaving their seeds behind. You're feeding grass that is still sleeping. So what you're doing is throwing money on your lawn. So just leave it alone. If you need to fertilize, you can always come by the extension office. You can get soil samples so that you will know what you need to do to add to your soil. And you can also find all sorts of information. And I'm there too because that's where I work. So all sorts of information on how to take care of your garden properly, what to do. Now I'm here today to represent the Mobile Master Gardeners. They are a wonderful organization. If any of you have time from August to November and would like to learn more about how to garden, how to do anything in your garden or outdoors, it's a wonderful organization. We're always looking for people. I have found some of my best friends there, some of my longtime friends, and it's just a lot of fun. But even if you don't want to go that deep into it, it's still, anytime you can get outside and do something, it's much better for you. You go outside, it has been proven, your heart rate slows down, your breathing slows down. You will eventually have a smile on your face because this is where we came from. This is where we belong. This is our nature. So getting out in nature is a wonderful thing, and I highly encourage it. You will find yourself bending down and squatting down and stooping down. Things that if you're inside, you're going, hey, that hurts. But when you go outside, it doesn't hurt quite so much. And you get to be out in the glory that is nature. And Alabama is a wonderful place to be out there. If it would cool off, I'd be happier, but that's coming too. So thank you very much.
So I am very appreciative to Gulf Quest for hosting this event and for having the Friends of Mobile Trees. This is an organization that came together just recently. It was founded by John Robb here locally, and I just recently became involved, but it's still in somewhat of a growth stage, but we're moving along quite well because we do feel that it serves a great need here in Mobile to protect the trees and to look after not only their maintenance but their preservation. And you know, I've just really learned how much we have in common because the mission of the organization is a citizen-based, you know, kind of grassroots group that does want to assist with other preservation efforts to make sure that when we see projects like the renovation of Broad Street and when we see other construction projects, that someone is there as a safeguard to let the administration or other officials know that the citizens have a great concern and are vigilant and are watching what is happening. Because I became involved with the organization due to mainly my somewhat unusual passion for live oak trees. And I'll just briefly tell you how I got involved in that was also somewhat through my roots in Louisiana. I'm from the New Orleans area, and I had about 5 or 6 years ago a traumatic experience in life, and it was right about that time when I was kind of dealing with that my uncle called from New Orleans and said, you know, your great-grandfather's collection of slides, I found a box of. So my great-grandfather was a photographer in New Orleans started in the late 1920s and worked through the 50s. And he was known nationally for his images of French Quarter balconies and patios and things like that. But a lot of people didn't realize that he spent a lot of time down on Grand Isle and southern Louisiana taking pictures of the swamps, but these oak trees. And when he passed away in 1967, the family gave everything to the New Orleans Museum of Art. Some of it ended up in the Historic New Orleans collection, but they just let him come in and take every single thing out of the house. So when my uncle called and said, you know, I found this box of slides, and he was also known for his soft focus photography, kind of moody, misty looking scenes, and he was also known for being a traditionalist in that people had started using the paper film or the plastic film or whatever it is, but he always used the glass plates. And so my uncle said, I have this box of glass plates. Well, it turned out to be a whole car full of glass plates, about 1,000 of them, about 5x7s mostly, but they were scenes that people hadn't really seen, and they were mostly scenes of those Grand Isle oaks and people just lounging under them. And so at that time in my life, it was just this kind of syncing of events where it helped me to kind of reconnect to home and think about my childhood growing up in City Park, you know, playing on the big live oak tree branches, and that always brought me such happiness. And so, you know, what you were just saying about, you know, the need to connect with nature, you know, that it gives us a feeling of joy. And I think that's one of the main missions of the organization, is to preserve that natural environment for our next generation. And I know from looking at those oaks so much that that is kind of a feeling that you get. There is some feeling that comes to me from a live oak with those branches spread that I get from no other tree or from no other experience. And we can't deprive the next generation of that experience with the natural environment. And so, you know, a big part of our mission is not only to preserve for the future, but to engage young people today in that experience and to interest them. And so I know Lanyap has approached the organization about potentially starting something that I think we've been missing here in Mobile, which is an Adopt a Tree program. So we're working on that, but I'd love to see, working towards hopefully next school year, integrating something into the schools where the children can become involved in learning about the trees, measuring them, you know, really engaging the public as much as possible. So that's the mission of the organization. I spent too long with that, but my interest has been in just being so much involved with the trees, and through reconnecting with my family and those photographs. I spent a lot of time meditating, couldn't exercise anymore, so I live close to Magnolia Cemetery, and I go sit in that cemetery and I look at the oak trees, and I started taking pictures with my little iPhone. And I'm not a photographer, but it's been about 5 years, and I go almost daily, and so I have literally thousands and thousands of oak tree pictures, and I study everything. And to me, they're very much like people, and I give them names, and I look at the different personality characteristics in every branch. And so when we talked about, when I see, you know, an oak tree come down, to me it's like a death, you know, and it affects me, it really does. And so when we were approached with the subject of invasive species, John and I were talking, and we looked at each other, and the only thing that we both said were human beings are the invasive species. And so that is the subject of what I wanted to look at. But I wanted to just kind of go through some of those photographs with you. So this will be a bit of a pictorial for you. And just look at, from a relatively non-scientific but experience-based perspective, the impact of the human species on the live oak. And so we will do that, and I will give you my perspective here. Let's see. Okay. So this is just on a PDF. Now one thing is, it is almost impossible to get a good, this is not mine. I did not take that picture. This is, it is almost impossible to get a good picture of a live oak, because there's something, you know, it's everywhere. It's all around you. You have to have some kind of professional panoramic lens like this person did. I think this is the angel oak, one of the most well-known oaks in the country. But at least this picture does give you the kind of feeling that you get when you're under an oak tree. And that's, you know, something that a few live oaks really have that kind of spread of the branches, but that's what makes them unique. When you're under that canopy, to me, it's kind of like being in a chapel. It's almost a religious experience. You feel protected. You really do. So live oaks were apparently, they are millions of years old. They're like the dinosaurs. And they did come down to the Americas millions of years ago from Asia and from Europe, and they came mainly, apparently, to me it seems like it would have been the other way around, but apparently they they separated into different species once they were here, and the West Coast species became very different from the East Coast species. But the live oak that we have today is native to just down from Virginia through Florida over to Texas. So it's our southeastern corner where we have the advantage of these live oaks. But I said that to me, they have the personalities, they have the characteristics of human beings. And one of, the basic point that I want to make sure I make it before I leave, is that whenever I hear about planting them in the right places, doing the right thing to preserve the oak trees, taking care of the oak trees, where should we plant them and all this, what do they need? And the thing is, you can always go back to space, that they need space to live in, because we can see, and it's an obvious scientific fact that their species grows branches that spread out more, if not as much as in height, and the root system also spreads out, and that's what grounds them. But I always had this feeling that they needed something else, that there's just something, when I'm around an oak tree, I feel like I have to be respectful and kind of quiet. And I thought about it a lot, and I decided that I think they need quiet. And I think that it's not so much, and it is, scientifically it is, that they need space, and they are affected negatively by the smog, by the contaminants in the air and all these things. But they do, of course, as vascular organisms, they do help to absorb that, and they do clean the air, they do help the environment. But the noise is a factor, and I finally found the research to back me up on this, that yes, trees are also important in our modern environment, because trees themselves, all the trees, do actually absorb some of the noise that we experience. But all animal species, including plants, are negatively affected by too much noise. And so when they're absorbing, I got to go forward in the slides, don't I? When they're absorbing the noise, it's hurting them. And they're absorbing it for us, just like they're absorbing the contaminants in the air for us, but it's hurting them, and they will be negatively affected by it. Okay, so all that goes back to the fact that they do have kind of human characteristics. They are very much like humans, and one of the things about that is that in their evolution over time, okay, so this quote from this book says, this was just an article that I found on their earliest origins, and they talk about their the hybridization of their genes, and how different species of oaks can become, you can have hybrid oaks that are more than one species, and also how they, okay, I just have to get to where I'm moving this effectively for you. So this, it's just talking about how they came millions of years ago, but it's their quick ability to adapt, and this is just about how they spread, but their quick ability to adapt, to even hybridize with other species. Also, their ability their roots can even grow into each other. They can apparently, according to these studies, they can assist each other. They can also spread diseases in that same way from one to another, but they literally have studied that one species will dominate an area, and take over, and it's because of this communication that their root systems eventually will have with one another. And so this adaptability, in my view, makes them a bit more like humans, but you would also say that this is what has helped them to survive. So they are kind of like the dinosaurs of our environment, and they dominate any forest system that they are in. And as that previous quote said, I think I've read that they're like 60% of the oaks, all of the species of our tree life here, and don't quote me on that, but that quote said that there are 40% of the tree life in Mexico. And so if we're looking at the whole Gulf, you know, this is not just North America, but it's South and Central America as well that they began to migrate down into. But we have a special treat here in the southeastern part of the United States in having these enormous trees that provide us with that kind of shelter. And this is something that makes Mobile special. And so another big thing about the organization is there was a tree, there was a book published in like the late 70s or early 80s, I think, called Canopy of Trees, and an organization that came together, some of you may remember this happening, that developed a tree trail, and they did a map. You know, of course, back then it was just printed. And, you know, that map was resurrected by the Tree Commission. But the Friends of Mobile Trees organized because of a bit of issues that were raised by the state with the Tree Commission. And so the Tree Commission hasn't been as active lately, and it's reviving again and coming back together. But there was a great need for a while there. And so one of the things that we want to do is to revive that map and to move forward and focus on tourists that are, you know, really looking in Mobile at the history of the city. And, you know, we promote ourselves as a historic city. But what makes Mobile unique? It's the integration. When you're in Mobile, it still seems like a sweet town. It doesn't seem like the city, you know, for the population size that it has. It still has that quaint little small town feel in many parts, but the history. And so the built history is very much integrated with the natural environment here. Tourists always notice the greenery, they notice the trees, and that's always been true. And so as a historian myself, I spend way too much time reading old newspapers, and I just read and read and read, and it's an addictive thing. You can't stop. And so I've got so many articles. Everyone that traveled to Mobile always commented on the oak trees. The oaks, the oaks, the oaks, the oaks on government, the oaks in Bienville Square. And so these are just a couple of quotes that I pulled up for you. This one is from 1901, describing the city. And let's see. They discuss Mardi Gras and they discuss Magnolia Cemetery, but they say many of the streets are bordered with the mammoth live oak trees. What marvelous treat. And then when Theodore Roosevelt visited the city in 1905, more than one of the headlines focused more on the oak trees in Bienville Square than they did on the president's speech. And so in this one they say it was brilliant with electric lights. And so, you know, the lights, this was 1905, that was big and that was new, but they're still commenting on the magnificent grove of live oak trees. So back in the 19th century, in other words, the oaks were still very impressive. And in many parts of Mobile, they are still impressive. But there's one from 1906, and this is a picture of the Avenue of Oaks in 1901. And even down to, you know, more recently in the 70s, here's Cami East making a comment in her wonderful column writing. She comments that the trees of Mobile really should be more of a tourist attraction. And then here's one more from the 19th century. This was Bayshore Road. Okay, so this was roughly where we've got so much attention focused right now, because this is basically Broad Street, right? So if you keep going down Broad Street, if you're at Government and Broad, and you've got the Greers and the church and another church and the CVS that's getting ready to close. Okay, but then you go down Broad Street and you keep going, you get to the I-10. Then you'll come to Arlington Park on your left. Then you'll come to the new, which they're talking about right now, the development of Brooklyn by the Bay, the new waterfront area. And I go sit at Arlington all the time because it's our closest excellent access to the waterfront. And Brooklyn by the Bay is going to be the same thing. But then you've got the new airport. So there's all this attention on developing that, but it was nationally recognized at the time because in the late 1900s and early 20th century, we're familiar with Monroe Park, but it was actually a series of what they called resorts, little getaways, and you could take the streetcar out there. First you had Frassati was one, then you had Arlington, which is roughly where Arlington Pier is now, and then you had, and they got a little bit more rowdy as you went down Broad Street, and so there was horse racing and there was gambling and all, but this is what it looked like, and it was lined with oaks. So today though, you can see, look at those oak trees. Look on the left. The same oak tree is still there. And we can go and we can look at it. Okay, so this is Frassati. That's what it looked like over the water. But I'm going to skip over those. This is like a walk down Broad Street. Okay, I'm going to skip this for just a second and I'm going to come back because I want you to see those oaks. Where are they? We're going to, here we are. Okay, so this is, I took this one. This is the oak just outside of Arlington on Broad Street. And this is that, this is the same one. But you can see today, if you go drive down there, those same oak trees. These are healthy. There's not a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of noise out there. So if we were to run through, I'm going to run through Broad Street with you. So we've got the Broad Street renovation going on right now. Okay, this is the corner of Broad and Government. But they took out two of the oak trees that they weren't supposed to take out initially, but I know there were drainage problems and they were blocking the drains. Those are right on the street though. This is the point I want to make. Those are right on the street. There is a lot of traffic right there. They're not very healthy. They're okay, but they're not very healthy. And these are the ones that were cut down. That's kind of my memento picture. And they are cutting them down. But the thing is that you can't replace them. You know, in our environment today, you're not going to get a really, really healthy live oak. So this is just a few blocks away on Michigan as we're moving toward the south, I guess. This is on Duval as you're getting close to Arlington. These are healthy, pretty, wonderful oaks right now. So, you know, we have concern, you know, if this is, I think that Broad Street will always be, once the airport is really getting going and up and running, I think it'll always be the scenic route, the secondary route. I think people are going to take mostly the interstate, but it will increase traffic out there. It will have an effect on these trees. It will have effect on, you know, the beauty that you can still see. This is right before you get to the interstate at St. Matthew's Church. So that was a little walk down Broad Street. So then I just want to show you. So instead of peace and quiet, I like to say the oaks need space and quiet. But if you look at if you look around the city, and you find the very healthiest oaks, they're never right on the street. They're away from the street, far away, or they're tucked away in little corners. They're in quiet spaces. They're in places that are not disturbed every day by traffic and noise and smog and congestion. Spanish Plaza is a great place where the oaks are still in good condition, where the human species has not quite had the impact that it has in other places. Another place is, this is Washington Square before the fountain. You can see some of those young oaks just starting out. And here it is today. Those oaks are mature and they're in very good health. There's a lot of beautiful oaks still in Washington Square. This is Magnolia Cemetery, my little hideout. And there are a lot of oaks there because it's a quiet space. This guy is over in the corner, all isolated. It's like he's in timeout. But he's big and beautiful and healthy. The best place, if you want to go see good live oaks, the best place in the entire city is across the street from Magnolia Cemetery and the Jewish Cemetery. No one goes there. No one goes. I mean, unless you're going to visit, I've never seen anyone else there. I'm always alone. And I'm alone with the oak trees. And it's like a chapel. And they are the most, they're just the healthiest oaks I think I've ever seen. And so it's a beautiful place to go and to connect with them. But then we still have the beauty of nature in Mobile that we are fortunate to have, and we need to hold on to, and we need to protect these oaks that are in endangered areas. And so when you drive down Government Street, it's been renowned for over 100 years for the canopy of oaks. But Dauphin Street also, and there's so many neighborhoods that are the same, but Dauphin Street's got a lot of traffic, and many of the oaks are suffering. And so here are just a few that we can really see don't have the same fullness. They don't have the dark leaves and the healthy tree trunks. Many of them are rotting. This one is almost completely hollow on the inside. You can't really see it up close. This one does look, its branches are amazing. It looks good from the street, but when you get a close up, and that's kind of a dark slide, but when you get close up, you can see some of the damage. And so some of these, they're healthy. They certainly need to be preserved, but you can see the wear and tear that the constant activity, the constant noise, the traffic, the human presence and our modern lives have taken on them. When you look up close, you can see the yellowing, the whitening of the bark. You can see it falling off. You can see the limbs look brittle. The leaves look yellow. So just, and I hope that the organization, I know it's a major part of our mission to educate young people about these things so they can notice, so they care, so they look more closely. They don't just walk by a tree and kick the branches off to the side. They look at the tree and they think about it, and they think about its health. This one is right on the corner of Catherine and Dauphin. Really congested corner with a lot of traffic. These two, I like the way they kind of look in a way, but they're not very healthy when you look up close. So I got that picture of them up close. Oh, that's right. By the way, it's just off of Dauphin on Ann Street by the the Greek synagogue, right across the street. This is on Airport, at Memorial Park. There are some oaks there that are doing well, but again, you can see the difference when you just look at them. You can really feel and see the difference. There was a 1892, that's an 1892 engraving of Government Street with all the oaks. But the oaks in downtown, again, many of them are healthy enough, like this one outside of the cathedral, but you can immediately notice the difference. So basically, we need to remember that it's not just that when, for instance, they're renovating Broad Street and we have the roundabout, that there was some discussion what to do with that roundabout that's right at Canal and Broad, what to put there. Well, I think they're going to go forward with a live oak, but they like to live in groups. You might get enough space, but you really need 40 feet around for the roots, and it's just going to be in the center of a lot of commotion and a lot of congestion, and it doesn't seem as though we're ever going to be able to see the oaks like this prosper and flourish to the way that they have in the quiet spaces. So we can't get rid of the ones we have. We have to hold on to anything that's healthy enough and connect the next generation with that kind of majestic, the feeling that you get
from being under the branches of these oaks. And so we do have a couple of nationally famous ones. Of course, the Duffy Oak on Caroline, a very quiet street that not a lot of people pass by. And then there's the Boyington Oak, and so I'm just about at the end of these. But the Boyington Oak is also in a very, very quiet little corner that nobody goes to. It's tucked away kind of behind Greer's, and there's this little corner where it's not just the Boyington Oak, but there are a couple of others, and here are a couple of pictures of them. It's just a little grove of oaks, maybe 5 or 6, all in really good health and all really well preserved there. So I will just leave you with this one quote. I retired from teaching history after a number of years in 2014, early retirement, and I went back to some of my research, and so I write about the history of Mardi Gras in New Orleans and Mobile and the early origins of it and some of the misconceptions that we have and try to correct those. And so there's one quote. Julian Lee Rayford was someone who wrote many of the myths and the stories that we have today with us, some accurate but not all. And so with though his very extremely gifted and talented personality in the arts, he took a real he gained a real connection when he learned about the life of Joe Cain. And so he, of course, wrote a lot about Joe Cain. And so when we think about Mobile's Mardi Gras and we think about Joe Cain, what we think we know about Joe Cain really came to us from Julian Lee Rayford. And many of you, of course, are very familiar with him and his work. But he wrote a short story, Julian Lee Rayford did, called The Tree. And it was about an oak tree on Joe Cain's property. And so he gives the oak tree, Julian Lee Rayford does, he gives the oak tree these personal characteristics. And when Julian Lee Rayford did that, he was kind of associating himself with that oak tree. He wrote it as though he was associating Joe Cain with that oak tree, but it was really, himself, and he was, basically saying, I deserve more credit. But he was right, though, in the sense that he said, people, this was in Bayou La Battery where this oak tree was, but, he was just saying, people don't appreciate me, my age, my experience, everything I've watched. I've watched the Civil War go by. I've watched every storm go by. I've seen everything. And people need to appreciate me as a historic monument. And that's what these oak trees are. So the human environment has had an impact. We can see it in the trees if you just look closely, and we can do something about it while there's time. So that's the idea, and that's the mission of the organization. And so I thank you for having us, and I guess we'll have questions.
Mexican hydrangea?
Ruella, petunia,
Okay.
purple.
Yeah. How do you get rid of it? I mean,
The best bet is to dig it up, throw it away. It does.
Underground?
You can actually, the thing that I have found that works the best is to cut it off, leave a little stub, spread it with Roundup, and then put like a black plastic bag over it and weight it down. The heat will reactivate that Roundup, and it will force it down into the root system. It may take more than one time.
It's all over the place.
I know.
A
Because
neighbor planted it and it came across the fence.
you're lucky they didn't plant bamboo. You got a chance with Ruella. Bamboo, you're out of luck. You need to move. But you can take care of that, you really can. But it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it was not there a few years ago, but it is real.
And that's the thing that people don't realize. I have clients that say, oh, I want that, and I'm like, no, you don't. I will not put it there because it's virtually impossible to get rid of unless you actively, some of these things, it almost becomes a job to get rid of it. You have to look at it daily or weekly and take care of it.
And I think it's called pony's foot. It's a little stuff grows in the wintertime.
I've never
Got a
heard.
little odor to it. And round leaves, stays low in the grass. And then, but then when the St. Augustine takes over, it just wipes it out.
St. Augustine, yeah. The best thing to get rid of weeds in your lawn is to have a very healthy lawn. Don't water every day. Water once a week if we need it. Mobile's a rainiest city in the United States, continental United States, so we don't generally need a lot of water. Now, this summer made a liar out of me, but water deeply. You don't have to go 4 inches through your root system on your grass, but water deeply, fertilize correctly, have a nice lush lawn, and it will drown out all the weeds. So, I have business cards though if y'all want to contact me.
What about
Yes.
camphor trees? Are they invasive?
Yes, yes.
Are
And
are
they-
native to Mobile?
No, no. Now, when I was a kid growing up, my mother did nothing but camphor for everything. That's where they get it from, the camphor trees. Camphor trees they colonize. You're almost never going to have one tree, and if you cut it, you're going to have a bunch of babies. The best thing to do with that is, again, cut it off. It rarely produces a thick bark. Usually when they're younger, the bark stays green, but cut it down. Again, do the Roundup or the brush killer on it. And it's not going to be easy to get rid of. You can eventually, but they're not easy to get rid of because they are clumpers. I've got my yard is full of crepe myrtles. I had one crepe myrtle about 25 years ago. Cut it down. I have crepe myrtles that have traveled my entire property from that thing. years ago. Plants want to live, and they will do whatever they can to continue to live. You just have to be tougher than they are. Again, like I said, it may not be easy, but it will work eventually. Of course, I'm not winning the game on my crepe myrtle, I'll tell you that now.
Let me ask a camper-related question. So there's a lot of it in my neighborhood, and some of the neighbors say that it was originally planted because they felt that the fragrance of the camphor prevented or decreased mosquitoes, kind of like citronella, and it does smell a little bit maybe
Yeah.
like citronella.
It smells medicinal.
But does it really do anything for mosquitoes? Is that, no.
Citronella doesn't either. I mean, unless you burn a candle, you can have all the citronella you want, unless you're sitting there constantly squeezing and get that all out. Then, no, to be honest with you, have y'all ever heard of beauty berries? They're the things that make the stalk that has the purple flowers, kind of magenta flowers.
Okay.
The Native Americans, that has natural DEET in it. So you can take those leaves and rub them on you. It has a nice fragrance, and it's DEET. The Native Americans use that. They taught the settlers how to do it. They would take branches of it, stick it in their mules to keep the flies away from them. They would use it in their bedding. But you can take that, you know, the berries, the Native Americans would use that for dye. And don't let your children eat it. It's not going to hurt them, but they taste really bad because I tasted them.
Birds won't even eat it.
No, they're beautiful, but they're not really invasive. They're a native that serves a purpose. But again, crush those leaves and rub it on you, and the mosquitoes won't bite you, because mosquitoes love me.
What's the best way to get rid of bamboo?
You can dig it up. You're going to continue to have to dig it up. Literally, to keep it from invading even more, you have to get a piece of metal and stick it about 2 feet in the ground, about 18 inches in the ground, leave about 6 up, and encase it and work on it within that circle. That's the only way to keep that root system from going out. They are tenacious, and they grow a foot a day. That's why Vietnamese used it to kill a whole bunch of soldiers, because they could stick it under them and it'd grow right through them.
Is any harm done in using the bamboo, run it through the chipper shredder and using it for compost?
I would not do that. If it, I don't know for a fact, don't get me wrong, I don't know, but I would let it dry out, get it up off the ground, let it dry out, and then send it through the chip. Don't try to do it when it's green. Again, I don't know that it will root, but I know I have friends that have cut it thinking I'm going to make some steaks and make it a little thick, and it grew. I mean, that was not their best day, let me tell you. But, and you know, people used to, before they used bamboo, they would do that with a lot of sticks that they would get off of, limbs that they would get off of it, and they, you know, weave it together and make a weir, it's called a weir, and make fences for things. They would use the wild roses. The pioneers would use wild roses and plant it along their fences, and then when the wood would rot eventually, cows weren't getting through that with those roses. They will eat you up. So, you know, they have natural defenses against things. And when you see, let me just say one more thing, when we're talking about the live oak trees, when you see a Spanish moss, it's an epiphyte. An epiphyte, it's actually an orchid. An epiphyte needs something to grow on. It does not take anything away from that tree whatsoever. It does not suck nutrients. The resurrection fern that you see on the oak trees that's brown until it gets damp and then it turns green, that also is an epiphyte. It will actually, and orchids are epiphytes, it will actually donate some of its sugars, its food, to the tree. Now the tree doesn't need it, but it has to have a place to live, to attach itself. So out of the goodness of its heart, it shares. But when you see things like mistletoe, that's bad stuff. It will eat your tree up because it steals the nutrients and it gives nothing back. But if you see, I know I've had people that have moved here, some of the master gardeners from other places, said, oh, I went and took all that off my tree. And I'm like, sweet Mother of Mercy, I can't believe you took Spanish moss off of your tree. But they thought it was hurting it, and it's not at all. Yes.
Where did it go? We used to be all over downtown.
Because we don't have, I know we feel like we have the humidity we've always had, we don't. Because we have more sidewalks, more buildings, more streets, which is exactly what she was talking about. All of that absorbs a lot of that humidity. And we're putting out, our cars are putting out things. These are like orchids. They have a certain kind of
But you know, there's a pocket on Fernway, and there's a pocket by St. Catherine's, and it gets a hell of a lot of traffic there. But it lives. But you can take it and move it, and it will not live. I tried.
Yeah, we have natural little orchids that grow. And if you go to Summerby, when you go in that main gate, and rather than turning left, you go straight and see the residential houses, those little oak trees have thousands of little orchids on them. And I actually took one off thinking, I'm a master gardener. Didn't. I'm sorry, you had a question?
Is there no way to assist these folks to first nourishment, feed them or anything? I know they make little food sticks about like that.
You can. They, more than, when you mow your grass, don't pick those clippings up. That's God's fertilizer. He grew it, he's putting it back in the soil. Try not to add too much. If you do want to fertilize and use a chemical fertilizer, which I don't really recommend because it's a chemical, cow manure. You can pick it up, you can throw it out, it's inert, it has no smell, no fragrance to it anymore. I'll do that about once a year on mine. And you don't need a lot. And it just gives it a little extra boost. But live oak trees, their root system, like you saw on there, if their limbs end here, go twice as far. That's where their root systems go. That's why they last during hurricanes, because their root system is vast. It's not necessarily as deep as a pine tree, which is why a pine tree sways, because it has a root system that goes straight down, which is why you'll never see squirrels in a pine tree. The babies are thrown out. But an oak tree is made to last. It is heavy, but it's situated in the ground with big, big feet. Whereas a pine tree is tall and lean and it's going to do this. It's made to do that. Its vascular system will actually creak and crack, where an oak tree won't do that. So it's just the way they're made in nature.
Yes, when you find these oak trees and the limbs drag the ground and grow on the ground, will they
Root,
take root when they on the ground like that?
rarely will they take root because their bark is about this thick. And almost all the trees that you see, the inside of those trees are dead on the inside. Because the vascular system, the growing part, the cambium layer, is on the outside. So the inside is no longer growing. And you can look at some of the oak trees that are downtown along that, they're about 300 years old. But you can look at some that look every bit that big that aren't that old. It depends on where they are and the kind of nutrition and if they're getting everything they need. So the only way you can do that is they have a bore that they bore to the center, and they pull it out, you can count the rings, and then they stuff it back in and seal it up to keep bugs out of it. But our live oak trees were meant to be here. Their gene system and everything about them is meant to live here. They can't live other places. And she was talking about them intermingling. Magnolias are the world's worst. You can have a magnolia tree, and if there's a forest, they have done genetic testing, and they're all different. They will mix and breed with any other magnolia anywhere around. They're very indiscriminate about that. But our oak trees are very special, very, very special. All of our trees, we wouldn't be here. We can't breathe without them. Yes, sir.
So the oak trees are great and the live oaks particularly, but what about water oaks? They seem to have a less popular reputation.
They do because they don't last as long. I have them at my house, and if I had been smart, I'd have cut those suckers down because they're this big. And you know, they say when a hurricane comes or a tornado, find a place in your house where you could be safe. I don't own a place in my house. I'll have to go across the street to the neighbor because my entire property has the ability, because it's live oaks. I have one live oak, the rest of them are water oaks or laurel oaks.
So what I hear is that the water oaks can rot from the inside. You can't even see it very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't take the hurricanes as well, and they topple over. And I think
They're
that's what
just
you're
not
talking
built
about.
the same. It's just like we have a bunch of different kind of pine trees, but the only one you can set fire to the ground around is a longleaf. It actually likes fire. In fact, it will not produce, the seeds will not produce another pine tree unless it has had some fire on it.
So where did the water oaks come from? You would think that this area, that the oaks that would be here take hurricanes well, like the live oaks do, etc. But the water oaks don't. Are they
Our
kind of
hurricanes
invasive?
have gotten a lot worse, and it's because of us. So they haven't had, in nature, everything will adapt to where it lives for its habitat. We have not given nature enough time to adapt to a Katrina or an Ian, or maybe even whatever this one's name is, I forget what it is, Nicole. It just doesn't work that way. We need centuries to have this happen, and we're not giving it centuries. And everything that we are doing is not helping nature. We are the worst thing for nature. We have brought in stuff that we shouldn't have brought in. We're building houses. It's not good. But we're here. We're not going to go anywhere. We have thumbs. We're the bosses. So if you have one that's small enough, I would definitely take it out if you can. I can't in my property. I can't take mine out. So I'm just hoping and praying that, they live longer than I do. Because I know that there is one that's damaged because it's seeping this sticky, smelly, brown stuff out of it, and I know it's not good, and it's the biggest one that will fall smack dab in the middle of my house. The good thing is, when you live in a I live in 2/3 of an acre, and everybody has a lot of trees, except the next door neighbor who took them all down for a swimming pool. Some people should not be in vacancies. Anyhow, when the wind blows, it can't penetrate through all that forest to get. So the trees are acting like penguins do. Penguins in the middle stay the warmest. The wind blows and they eventually work their way to the outside and give everybody a chance in the center. But our trees actually protect us because they buffer our homes, which are situated normally lower than the tree line is. So that's, you know, it helps us by doing that. And all the root systems are holding our soil together. I mean, the earth is a natural water filter because the rain that comes down is no longer clean. So we just need to do a better job of protecting what is here. Because honest to God, this is one earth. We got no place to go. And if we don't, I mean, we're lucky we're old enough, well, maybe not you, we're old enough that we're not going to see the destruction of it, hopefully. But our children or our grandchildren may not be that lucky.
She's young.
If we, yeah, baby girl. So, you had another question?
The green pamphlet that you have, is it available at the Extension Service?
It is not. This actually comes from a program that we put on. But you're welcome to look at it and find out, I don't have my glasses on, where it does come from. And like I said, there were 3 of them in the container. So I only had that here. You want to watch it? And this is, I work for Auburn. Yeah, you got to watch those seeds. I did the exact same thing. You have to be careful, again, about what you plant, because it is so easy these days for things to just get out of hand. And like I said, I've been a master gardener for 30 years, but I wasn't smart when I did it. I mean, I hadn't really gotten that smart about it, except the last 15 or so years. And I had stuff in my garden that's like, people will come over and they say, oh, I love that. And I'm like, no, you can't have it. I can't get rid of it. But it's just, and the nursery business, Home Depot and Lowe's will sell you anything. I can't tell you how many times I've gone and seen all sorts of plants, peonies. There's no chance that you're going to grow a peony and get a flower down here. Not going to happen. If I can't do it, nobody can do it. You can't, it just doesn't work here. But there are a lot of things that we can do. Citrus is one of them that's wonderful for here. And I mean, Satsuma's named because it was a big Satsuma plantation. I live in Saraland, which, and I'm at 188 feet. So I get much colder than down here by the bay. And I have lemons, Satsumas, clementines. I even grow avocados. I get many of them. Oranges, grapefruit. I have raspberries and blackberries, blueberries, and loquats, which are wonderful. Even my palm, I have a pindo palm, and it makes fruit all the time, and it tastes like custard. So it's a very special.
Do you have a nursery that you go to that specializes in native local plants, et cetera? Because it, as you mentioned, it's not at Home Depot, it's not at Lowe's.
Not here in Mobile. The Mobile Botanical Gardens is your best place to get natives because they shop from all around. Some of our best plants aren't even natives, like camellias. And a lot of times our natives aren't extremely showy, and people want big showy things. But you can do a combination of all sorts of plant materials. I have grown watermelons in my front yard. I have grown all sorts of stuff. I remember times when I would grow Texas star hibiscus, and the leaves look sort of like marijuana, and the cops would drive by and they'd go, and then they'd keep going when they saw the great big red flower. But, you know, you can do all sorts of stuff. My yard is primarily shady, and so my driveway has sunlight. So I do all my vegetables in big containers on the driveway. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm telling you, my little cherry tomatoes have gotten 15 feet tall. I have to wait for them to fall over to even pick them. I can't grow the big tomatoes. That's okay with me.
Where's the extension office? Is it?
It's on Schillinger's Road. You know where the flea market is?
Yeah.
Okay, if you travel a little further north on Schillinger's, it's on the right-hand side. There's a big blue sign out there that says Alabama Cooperative Extension. Or maybe it says county office, I don't know. I've been there for 8 years, but I don't remember seeing, I don't remember what the sign says. But we're open Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 4. And if you are interested in soil test, the test from us, you get a piece of paper and a box that's flattened. And what you need to do to do a proper soil test is dig in several different areas and put it in the soil in a bucket. You only need to go down about 3 or 4 inches. Put the soil in a bucket and mix it all up, and then put it in a plastic bag and put it in this little box. And you'll write on the piece of paper what you want to grow or what you are growing. And you send it off to Auburn. I think it's $10 for a box. Or maybe it's $10 for several boxes, I don't know. But it'll come back and it has a big piece of paper that tells you what you're supposed to do for fertilizer. And it will come out, if you have 100 acres, that's what they're giving you the information, because they're used to dealing with farms. But if you'll contact us, we can break it down for you and tell you what it's supposed to be. Yes, sir.
You mentioned avocados. What do you have to do to grow them?
You have to have a lot of sunlight. You have to have a very protected place. You can grow, if you get a seed, an avocado seed, you know, put a toothpick in it, stick it in water, you can grow a 30-foot tall tree, but it will not produce avocados. We have a hard time here. We can do citrus because we have mild winters. Avocados and certain other things require no cold hardly at all. So you have to have, like in Saraland, I rarely get an avocado. The trees are beautiful because I'm so cold there. But I grow it because I want to. Every now and then I get an avocado, but it's been a while. Just like bananas. You grow gorgeous banana trees, but it's not very often you're going to get a thing of bananas off of it because we get so cold that it stops the growth. So if you bag it, you know, put bags of leaves around it and bungee cord it to keep the stalk, then it doesn't have to come from the bottom back up again. And so you can chances are you can get bananas that way. But your avocado, I don't know where you live, but if you live below I-10 or you live close to the water or if it's in a protected area, then you might very well be able to grow avocados here.
Well, I've got
There are certain
three,
kinds.
that I grew by just sticking them in a pot. I didn't do the toothpick. I just stuck them in a pot of dirt.
That works.
I came back one day and hey, these little things popped up. So now I have these 3 growing in a pot, and I thought, you know, it'd be nice to put them outside. You're not giving me much hope.
Well, when you stop and think about, you know, I early on I kept thinking, well, I'm a master gardener, I can do this. But then I got to think, okay, where do these things come from? Mexico. We're way too rainy. We have too much wind, and we do get cold. We get freezes. So that pretty much knocks it out for a lot of things. It's not cold enough to grow a peony, by golly, which I wish it was, but it's still too cold for those things. And even in Saraland, there are times like two years ago, I didn't get a single satsuma. Now, my tree is just hanging down because we didn't have much cold. But 2 years ago, we had like 2 weeks of really hard, freezing weather for almost those 2 weeks. In fact, about 5 years ago, when we had the ice and the snow, where my roof line drips, it dripped that ice and that snow, and I had an orange tree that the trunk was this big, and it killed it.
Wow.
Because that cold water just dripped on the root system, it couldn't take it. So, you know, it just depends. We're iffy here. We can't grow peaches very well. We can't grow apples because we're not cold enough. They need certain chill hours, and we don't get that on a regular basis. I had this gorgeous, and about 3 years it was beautiful. The cherry trees, Yoshino cherries, like they have in Washington, for 3 years they were gorgeous. Never got no flowers. I cut it off and planted something that would actually give me flowers, flowering apricot, and it's gorgeous and it smells great. You don't get apricots off of it. But we can grow a whole lot of things here that a lot of people can't. So, you know, I mean, what do you have to lose? Try it. If it gives you an avocado, yay! If it doesn't, you got 3 beautiful little trees out of it, and if they bother you, you can cut them down and do something different. So, I have learned a long time ago, I will plant something and say, okay, you got 2 chances. You either do good the first time. If you don't, I'm going to give you 1 more chance. And after that, if you don't do well, I'm going to cut you down. I'm not even going to be sorry about it. I'm going to plant something else. And that's exactly what I've done. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is the live oak a protected species in the state of Alabama?
It is not protected, but If it gets to be a certain size, I'm assuming it's still against the law to cut certain sizes down. You have to have permission.
Yeah, they're champion oaks that are protected. Well, I don't know if they're technically protected, but yeah. I guess it's by the state or by the city that there are ordinances in place to protect them.
Do you know what size that is?
It depends on the
Depends on the
trunk
tree,
side
but the
as
lot,
well
I
as
wanna
the,
say 25.
it depends, they've changed it. It used to be bigger than that, and they changed it.
So
I
there
heard
was,
a
there were
rumor that
new
if it was
ordinances.
12 inches in diameter or larger, you had to have permits cut.
Yeah, there is a measurement, and I'm not sure what it is right now, but, yeah, Peter told me. The harbors.
There's one in Satsuma behind Aztecas, the Mexican restaurant, that 6 people couldn't get their arms around. But it's way back in the back, and you can't even see it because it's in a forested area. But it is, have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
It is gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. So, but one of the reasons the ones in Louisiana do so well is because it's that gumbo mud. It never dries out. And it's rich in nutrients because it's the alluvial that comes down from the Mississippi. And where I live in Saraland, I find seashells, and my soil is just as sandy as it could be. I don't have any mud. I don't have any red clay. I don't have anything. I do now because I've added to it. But when you stop and look at where you live and what it used to be, it's like when you do your DNA and they tell you where you're from. Well, I know I'm from France. Well, it wasn't always France. It was all sorts of things called other things in Europe. So when I got my sample back, they said, oh, well, and I thought, well, this is wrong. It's, I'm from France. I know I am. All my family's from there. But you have to stop and think about what this land was at one point in time, even thousands and thousands of years ago. You go to North Alabama and find oyster shells that are this big because it was part of the ocean at one time. You can go 100 miles off of the Gulf of Mexico and find dead stumps of trees because at one point in time that was still land, it wasn't the ocean. So you kind of have to work and think about and do the history of what this land was before. And over thousands of years, trees like the live oaks or the pines developed certain characteristics so that they can live. But other things like water oaks hadn't made it there yet. Laurel oaks hadn't made it there yet. And not everything's meant to be old. Look at us. Everybody's going to get to be 100. Some of us may. It just depends. Genetics is a wonderful thing. And you were talking about the tree, the root system. They actually, that is true. The root systems do grow together. You can have a mother tree that died 200 years ago and it's still a stump because its root system is feeding and helping. And those other trees, they talk to each other through the root system. And those trees will send out, if somebody gets sick and it's the same kind of tree, they will send out some of their food to boost that tree to help it live.
Yeah.
That's nature, yeah.
That brings about a question. I have a camphor tree that I want to kill. It's near citrus trees. When I cut it and I put the Roundup or some kind of herbicide on the cambium layer, will it get to?
Nope.
Will it get to the
It will not
citrus
hurt it at all.
trees?
And when you spray Roundup, if you're trying to spray it on a green plant, it has to be green and actively growing. It can't be green in the wintertime just because it's evergreen. It doesn't work. It has to be actively growing. But that root system will not carry that 5 feet away. It won't even carry it 3 feet away. It will kill what it is intended to, unless you pour it and just drench the ground. But you can spray the bark of a tree, and it's not going to hurt it with Roundup because it can't absorb it.
Have you heard of arsenal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will it damage those citrus trees if I get it in the cambium layer?
It should not, because most of the time, if those roots are touching, they are just touching. They're not intertwined. They do not react with each other. Just like I can't react with you because you're not my family. So they're totally different species. Not literally, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so it will not interact. When you have an old forest, then it has been there that long, and you have fungi that actually will carry some of the food for the trees away. And it's very interesting because there are trees in Africa, the acacia trees, and you've seen on the plains, there may be a tree here and another tree 5 miles away. When elephants or giraffes come to eat on the leaves of those trees, eventually the tree realizes that something is attacking it, and it will send up from its root system to the leaves a bitter smell and a bitter taste. And eventually those creatures will quit eating it because it's its defense mechanism. Now what the interesting part is, that will carry on the breeze, whichever way the breeze is blowing, and will hit other acacia trees. And before the creatures have a chance to get to those other trees, they have already sent up their defense. So they taste bad, they smell bad. And we think they're just, you're a tree. They want to live, and they will do whatever they can to make themselves live. It is
That's how the giraffes
amazing.
got longer necks by trying to,
Yeah.
over generations,
Yeah.
try to reach those
Exactly.
acacia trees.
Nature is made to survive, and whatever they can do to survive.